Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening wherever you are. Today we are here again with a very interesting topic, and the topic is M&A in 2024 Trends and Prediction. We have a special guest, Alexander Fries, who is Director of Corporate Development in Progress. So I let Alexander give some introduction about his firm and also what he does, and then we can start our discussion.
Sure. Sure.
Over
Hi,
to you.
everyone. Hello. Thank you. Hi, listeners. It's nice to be speaking with you all. Thank you for having me, or thank you to MergerWare for the opportunity to be on your podcast. My name is Alex Fries, and I'm on the corporate development team here at Progress Software. We are an infrastructure software vendor based in Burlington, Massachusetts. We've been around for about 40 years. We've been publicly traded on the NASDAQ for 30. We are executing on a total growth strategy where we are highly acquisitive and use M&A as a way to bolster our inorganic growth initiatives. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, welcome, Alexander. So, since the topic today is mostly about what is the trend and prediction for the next year. So if you look at M&A activities have been remained very slow during most of 2023, but various catalysts have also potential to start encouraging the deal makers to come off very strongly, in the next year, like 2024. So my question to you is just to set the stage. Could you share some of insight of your current state of M&A? What are notable trend and development have you seen recently?
Sure, absolutely. So I would classify the current state of deal activity as moderately active. We're obviously
Yeah,
down from the peak level of 2020, 2021 when interest rates were at all-time lows, but I would say that we've seen deal activity begin to uptick and accelerate in the last few months, and we expect
right.
this trend to continue in
Continue.
2024. Um,
Yeah.
One thing we've noticed is, VC investors continue to review their portfolio and sort of cull the herd. And what I mean by that is they're doubling down on their winners and they're participating in future rounds, but they're more hesitant and less willing to invest in highly unprofitable or
Mhm.
super growth inefficient companies that they might have
Mhm.
been willing to fund in the past.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Got it. Got it. So with business, yeah. And anything you want to add here? One more point or?
Yeah, so a few more points. So
Yeah, sure.
another
Please go
thing
ahead.
we've seen, another thing we've seen is an
Mhm.
uptick in the number of subscale or fire sale assets coming to
Mhm.
market. These are
Right.
companies with good technology, good customers, but they're unprofitable and are having a difficult time attracting incremental VC dollars.
Right.
And this might be because the level of growth isn't high enough to attract more VC, or they're too unprofitable. They haven't been able to right size operations quickly
Mhm.
enough to fit with today's increased focus on profitability. And so, a lot of these opportunities are too small for us to progress. They don't meet necessarily our financial criteria, but we've definitely
Mhm.
seen an uptick in these. And these are companies
Right.
that need to sell ultimately before they run out of money. And so we view these opportunities as coming at more favorable prices than some of the other assets we've looked at in maybe the last 24 months. Um,
Mhm.
I would say that more broadly, we've seen prices come down slightly from the peak.
Yeah.
Obviously, the higher cost of debt makes it harder for buyers to pay big prices and big multiples. But that said, high quality assets are still getting, mid to single digit
Mhm.
revenue multiples, at least in the software space. And I would say that valuations for assets with scale have
Mhm.
probably held up better than smaller assets. So at a
Got
high,
it.
so those are some trends I've seen. Yeah, and as we look into 24.
Sure. Sure. So if you look at, business are, expanding globally, what are the challenges and opportunity do you see or you anticipate in cross-border M&A deals in 2024? And how are company adopting their strategy for mostly cross-border deals?
Sure. So a few things here. First, on the challenges front, I would say there's a
Hmm.
few. So the first one that comes to mind around cross-border M&A is regulatory
Hmm.
hurdles. This
Hmm.
is especially true with very large deals where you're looking at large multinationals that have operations in many, many countries. Getting
Hmm.
regulatory approval for the deal is challenging and possibly increasingly challenging. The first deal that comes to mind is the Microsoft Activision deal.
Hmm.
Ultimately, that one was able to get to the finish line, but It was heavily scrutinized and challenged in both the UK and the US. Another
Mhm.
one with that view I've been keeping an eye on is the Adobe Figma deal. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that one is handled. That was announced, I think, over a year ago now and is yet to close. Um, so that's one challenge. Another one is geopolitical risk. I think, we
Mhm.
look at the evolving relationships between countries, China, Russia, and countless others. Um, I think the US continues to be a leader in technological innovation.
Mhm.
And so something to keep in mind when looking at acquisitions, investments, doing cross-border deals is things around like IP infringement and theft. It continues to be a problem in some markets. And so that's another challenge I see in cross-border M&A is protecting that IP
Mhm.
is challenging. And then also in sectors like technology or infrastructure, that are very sensitive to regulatory and government oversight.
Right.
That's another potential challenge when you're operating in those sectors, um,
Mhm.
I would say. And then finally, a final challenge is around technology and data compliance. And I think as
Right.
businesses become more digital, complying with data protection like GDPR in Europe and varying cybersecurity laws has become increasingly important.
Yep.
I think this will impact how companies do due diligence, because once you own the asset, ultimately you're responsible for understanding all of these elements. And so you need to
Mhm.
understand what you're getting into and what you need to comply with once that business is yours. And then finally, around selling to the US government or selling to any
Right.
foreign government, there's a
Mhm.
lot of added complexity that comes with that. And if that's not something your business currently does, it's something that you need to be very cognizant of and make sure you understand what goes into that because that's an area where you can trip up post close if you're not
Mhm.
fully knowledgeable in that
Yeah.
area. So those are some challenges. Um, I think there's also a lot of opportunity though. So
Yeah.
the first one that comes to mind is
Mhm.
market expansion. If you found solid product market fit and have found success in your home market, a great way
Mhm.
to enter a new market or grow in a new market is with M&A that'll get you access to new customer
Yeah.
bases, new distribution
Mhm.
networks. So that's one.
Yeah.
Another area is around getting access to technology and to key talent. Um,
Mhm.
Obviously, different areas of the world are stronger in that area than others, but in a competitive labor market, getting access to key resources, sometimes particularly at lower costs, can be a
Mhm.
very attractive option. And so that might
Right.
drive some cross-border M&A as well. And I'd
Mhm.
say that in an era where profitability is under increased focus and the growth at all cost era has finished, that's increasingly important. I think we saw during COVID the importance of having a diversified or streamlined supply chain. So if you have a very
Yeah.
long, complex supply chain that spans many
Mhm.
miles, that's a risk. And so you can really use M&A to simplify, diversify, and
Exactly.
nearshore your supply chain. So that's another
Mhm.
element of cross-border M&A that I view as an opportunity. And then
Mhm.
finally is around synergy realization, and we touched on this on technology and talent, but with an increased focus on profitability, if you can really consolidate operations offshore, as long as you do this thoughtfully and carefully, if you combine
Mhm.
these resources and capabilities, it can lead to greater efficiency and ultimately increased value. So those are a variety of
Mhm.
of opportunities with cross-border M&A and things I think listeners should be thinking about.
Mhm. Right.
And
So.
then
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and then in terms of
Uh-huh.
how are companies adapting to this, I think there are two ways. So one, I
Mhm.
think diligence processes are getting extended. I think as the deal pendulum swings slightly back towards
Yeah.
buyers, diligence processes are getting longer. They're becoming more comprehensive as they evaluate all of the various elements that companies do during diligence. And so I think that's affecting cross-border M&A. But then two, I think we're going to see an increased number of partnerships and alliances as a way to
Mhm.
sort of test before you buy. Before you
Yeah.
jump in on a full acquisition, you could mitigate risks, leverage some of the local expertise before a full
Yeah.
acquisition. So those are at a high level some key takeaways.
Yeah. So I exactly, when we spoke on this point, I realized there are lots of challenges, but in a cross-border deal, the opportunity is also immense. So it depends on how company are, evaluating the deals, like due diligence time, you said how to, shorten it. So just connected to this, I have another question, because you already
Sure.
spoke part of this. If you look ahead, what are your bold prediction for M&A landscape in 2024? Because
Hmm.
you already spoke about, cross-border deals, how the company are planning to do. But if you can give me some bold prediction for M&A landscape,
Hmm.
and also you see any trend and events it will shape
Sure.
the industry? Yeah.
Sure. So, I don't know how bold it is, but I could speak at least from my own perspective that
Yeah.
progress, we're going to remain patient. We're very
Mhm.
disciplined buyers. We've
Yeah.
we've always been a patient buyer. We're going to remain patient.
Mhm.
We only have so many G&A and integration resources, and we
Mhm.
can only acquire and integrate so many at a time. And so we try and be really intentional about
Mhm.
finding the right assets. And
Right.
so we feel as the market has hopefully shifted in our favor, we're
Mhm.
going to pass on good companies in the pursuit of great companies. And the companies we
Mhm.
passed on, maybe we would have looked at harder last year. But in
Yeah.
2024, we're looking for great companies that we could acquire over the next few quarters,
Mhm.
and really ultimately be as successful as possible. I think from a more macro level, um, people have talked about the Fed lowering interest rates going into 2024. To what
Right.
extent will they do that? I don't know. But I think
Mhm.
if we do see that reduction in interest rate, that could meaningfully impact the M&A market. We could see an increase in
Exactly.
M&A if those interest rates go
Mhm.
down. Um, Looking back historically, we've noticed a lot of PE firms and PE-backed strategics doing all cash deals specifically around subscale opportunities.
Mhm.
And they did this in response to the credit markets being tight. But I think
Right.
that um, if we do see interest rates go down in
Mhm.
the future, they might move away from that. Because in 22, those smaller acquisitions were really
Mhm.
bolt-ons. They had their platforms and they were doing these acquisitions all cash, smaller
Mhm.
deals into those smaller platforms. In the future, we might see an expansion of larger deals, an increased
Yeah.
number of platform deals with the lower
Mhm.
cost of debt. So that would be at a high level what I see for
Got it.
2024.
Sure. Yeah. So, we also wanted to, see how you think that technology will influence M&A strategy for the, for the coming years, like 2024 we are talking about. Are there any specific technology that you believe that will play a critical role in deal making process?
Sure. Yeah, so I think technology currently plays a large role in the deal making process, and I think it'll
Yeah.
it'll play an even larger one in the future. So, today we use a variety of tools and software products in what we refer to as our corporate development technology stack.
Mhm.
First we use PitchBook and CapIQ. These are broadly known. They're essentially company databases that give details on an enormous number of companies, public companies that has financial information, stock
Mhm.
information, private companies you could find
Yeah.
valuations, investors, all the employee counts, great data. So that's a huge part of the research we do or what we do on the research side. We use a
Mhm.
tool called Deal Cloud, which is a deal CRM when we could interact with 100 plus companies a year. And so keeping all
Mhm.
of the conversations and touch points straight in a central repository is really helpful. We also store documents and all of this, really it's a one-stop shop for our team to
Yeah.
find
Mhm.
information on the companies we talk to. We've also
Sure.
used in the past
Mhm.
an AI-based tool that really it helps on the sourcing side. So you put in your
Mhm.
search parameters for targets you'd like to find, and it will return a list of companies based on their proprietary algorithm. And so
Mhm.
we've used that in the past with success, and that was a meaningful addition to our practices. In terms of the future, actually something I'm working on this year and spending a fair amount of time on is figuring out how we can use AI in our due diligence practices. Today I wouldn't say
Mhm.
we're using a lot, but my sort of
Yeah.
thesis around AI for the diligence processes is not about corporate development using it, but it's
Got
actually
it.
about empowering the diligence and the functional teams
Mhm.
to use AI in their work. And so,
Mhm.
we're exploring various use cases. Some ones that are most obvious are like the legal team using it to review
Right.
customer, vendor contracts,
Mhm.
finance team using to review bookings, databases, and trial balances, and the people team reviewing censuses. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
applicability, um, and whether
Mhm.
it's AI, ML or not, but really just running data analytics on large data sets from various sources can make a really important impact. And finally, is my last point's around cybersecurity. So I think
Yeah.
cybersecurity is an increasingly important area to diligence, both
Right.
in the IT infrastructure of the target, but also the product security. And so we
Right.
rely on a various code scan, but
Mhm.
also a number of other technology tools to kind of review that when doing diligence. And I think that'll play an increasingly large role in the future.
Right. So now, surely I would like to wrap up this. And I wanted to give, understand your advice and insight for our audience. What would you like to share with our audience as a potential driver hurdle to M&A growth in 2024?
Sure. So I would say that M&A is a tool at every company's disposal, but ultimately M&A doesn't make up for a bad strategy or a bad product market fit. I think strategy comes first, and then thoughtfully using M&A as a way or a tool to execute on your strategy
Right.
is the best way to approach it. Ultimately, no deal is better than a bad deal, and so make sure your
Yeah.
strategy is fully fleshed out and you have an M&A process that you're confident in before doing acquisitions, because a bad deal can introduce far more problems than any solution it could have brought. And so I think it's important to remember that going into 2024.
Thanks for your time. And thank you, audience, for listening. I think we'll come back again with another round of podcast with some interesting topic. Looking forward, as Alex said, that, our predictions are very strong for next year. So we need to be prepared. And, technology is going to play a wider role for, expediting some of the due diligence and maybe post-merger, or legal teams can use AI. So I think lots of things are already using it. And the goal for 2024, that's what Alex summarized. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. And thanks, Alex, for having,
Sure.
having your time for this. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.